On the 10th day, energy seeks an escape. By the 45th, it finds cadence, and by the 100th, you stop chasing and start attracting. Welcome to Gods of Semen. I am Layert, your guide in this initiation where science, psychology, and spiritual tradition unite to rebuild the masculine from within. Today, I will reveal why the milestones 10, 45, and 100 alter your presence, how neural adjustments, breathwork, and routine transmute compulsion into focus, and how this deep reorganization manifests as a perceptible aura in the real world. If you feel apathy, burnout, anxiety, loss of direction, if you find yourself hostage to digital triggers and the silent erosion of your virile essence, this chapter is the bridge between your quiet struggle and the consolidation of a serene authority. Stay until the end because I will deliver hidden keys, field tests, and practical protocols to stabilize your internal rhythm, fortify your energetic boundary, and aim your power at a concrete mission. Subscribe now and turn on notifications with the awareness of a spiritual vow, because each video is a stage of an initiatory and evolutionary journey, and our goal of reaching 25,000 initiates is not a number, it is a summons for you to join a global movement of men who choose to transmute impulse into presence, dispersion into purpose, and noise into quiet leadership. Days 10, 45, and 100 act like mental rails that organize the experience of retention. They create milestones the brain recognizes as restarts, boundaries, and crownings. When the count reaches a milestone, attention subtly reconfigures. The mind turns toward what's being measured, reweighs cost and reward, and recommits. It's like a mark on the road that confirms direction and reduces doubt. What could be a shapeless timeline gains visible steps, and visible steps encourage visible effort. That's why round counts amplify focus and commitment. It isn't superstition, it's attention architecture. The sequence of days becomes a narrative, and narrative sustains discipline. The journey in 3 phases follows this design. At day 10, the system is still adjusting. There's loose, restless energy that looks for old exits and finds closed doors. It's common to feel surges of urge and environmental tests, because the body tries to validate prior patterns. The transition here isn't about brute force but redirection, moving errant energy into simple tasks, breathing, honest sleep. Around day 45, stabilization begins. Foundational routines have been repeated enough to carry part of the load on their own. The pull back to the old pattern weakens and focus shifts from not doing to building, training, dense reading, medium-range projects. The internal rhythm finds cadence and discipline stops being a daily arm wrestle and becomes a marked trail. By day 100, consolidation emerges. Energy doesn't just obey, it serves. There's less emotional swing and more direction. Retention stops being a goal and becomes a consequence of who you've become. Identity replaces effort. This path has social echoes because habits, posture, and routine are languages the body speaks without asking permission. When you change how you sleep, train, eat, and work, you alter postural tone, the steadiness of your gaze, and your breathing pattern. The voice tends to shed hurry, gestures become more economical, micro-expressions less reactive. The environment reads these signals even when no one names the reason. It shows up as small returns, quicker replies, quiet curiosity, selective invitations. It isn't magic, it's convergence. What we're calling aura here is the field of presence born from regulated physiology, steady attention, and coherent choices. At 10 days, that presence is basic and still fragile, but noticeable. You don't fold at the first distraction, and that changes how people approach you. By 45, an invisible boundary appears. There's an automatic respect that reduces social testing because your behavior communicates limits before any word. By 100, authority becomes serene, and the dynamic shifts from chasing to attracting. Clarity of direction organizes the room and steers conversations toward what matters. These milestones exist to serve 2 complementary functions. Internally, they organize energy, simplify decisions, and create checkpoints to revalidate commitment. Externally, they align behavioral signals the world picks up and responds to, shaping interactions with less noise and more purpose. Treating 10, 45, and 100 as turning points doesn't idolize numbers. It uses the calendar as a sculpting tool. First remove excess, then define contours, finally reveal the form. And the form, in the end, is presence that doesn't need to announce itself. The first 10 days feel like a frequency shift your body hasn't tuned to yet. Sleep patterns wobble, attention wants quick hits, and the nervous system keeps sending you back to old exits to see if they're still open. Urges arrive in waves rather than a constant stream, and the environment amplifies them with coincidence-like prompts. A thumbnail you haven't seen in months, a message at an odd hour, a memory that suddenly feels fresher than it is. This is the adjustment window where energy has been unhooked from a familiar circuit and hasn't settled into a productive one. Treat the restlessness as raw wattage looking for rails, not as a verdict on your will. Up to day 10, two things tend to alternate. There are brief highs of clean drive, short bursts of clarity where tasks feel simple, and rebounds where the mind negotiates. The negotiation is subtle. You rationalize micro-exceptions, you browse without a plan, you rehearse fantasies under the excuse of stress relief. These are not moral failures, they are the nervous system stress testing a new baseline. Expect ambient tests, old triggers resurfacing, social nudges toward late nights, schedule disruptions that invite you to postpone the new pattern. Expect also the tug of unfinished loops, conversations, feeds, and shows that promise closure but deliver cliffhangers. The goal in this stage is not stoic stillness, it is directed motion. The initial dangers cluster around three hubs. Digital triggers are the most obvious because the device collapses distance to gratification. Night boredom is the most underestimated because fatigue feels like permission to drift. Self-sabotage is the most camouflaged because it dresses as productivity. Suddenly you must reorganize files at 1 a.m., reply to every message, or research equipment you won't buy. Each hub shares a common mechanic. Open loops hijack attention, then attention justifies the loop. Breaking that cycle requires short, repeatable interrupts that can be executed even when you are not at your best. Start with screen hygiene as a structural fix. Put friction in front of habits that don't serve you and remove friction from the ones that do. Move the phone out of reach at night and assign it a parking spot outside the bedroom. Disable all non-essential notifications and bury gateway apps in a folder you don't see on the first screen. Use a single-purpose night profile. After a set hour, only calls from key contacts and a timer remain accessible. Replace infinite scroll with finite media, downloaded podcasts, a physical book, an offline playlist. Decide daytime windows for message checks and honor them like appointments. During the first 10 days, spontaneity is expensive. Add 4-7-8 breathing as your spike regulator. When you notice an urge cresting, change posture first. Stand tall, shoulders back, and redirect the breath. Inhale quietly through the nose for a count of 4. Hold for 7. Exhale through the mouth for 8 with a soft whoosh. Do 4 cycles, then walk for 2 minutes before you decide anything. The longer exhale cues the parasympathetic system and blunts the false urgency that urges try to borrow. Pair this with a simple anchor phrase you can think rather than say, something like steady hands, clear mind, to keep the mind from narrating the impulse while the body settles. Use the 2-minute rule as a loop breaker. When you catch yourself drifting, commit to any constructive action you can start and sustain for 2 minutes without negotiation. Wash a dish, do 10 slow push-ups, step outside and feel sunlight on your face. Write 3 bullet points for tomorrow's priorities. Take a cold splash on wrists and face. Tidy a small surface. The content matters less than the switch from passive consumption to active engagement. Often 2 minutes convert into 10 because momentum is rehabilitated. If not, you still collected a win and proved to your brain that you can move on command. Keep a visible list of 2-minute options so you don't spend your willpower choosing. Integrate these pieces into a simple circuit. Notice the cue, change posture, breathe 4-7-8, execute a 2-minute action, return to a pre-selected task. Pre-selection is critical. Choose the next task when you are calm so that your future self can follow instructions rather than negotiate. Track it lightly in a pocket log. Time, cue, interrupt used, so you can see patterns by the end of the week. In the day 10 window, mastery looks like reducing the delay between noticing and interrupting, not like never feeling a pull. Each successful interrupt lays track. Enough track turns errant energy into forward motion. At the day 10 mark, presence is built from simple, observable anchors. Posture stabilizes first because it is the quickest way to signal coherence. Stack the body as if aligning a plumb line from ear to shoulder to hip to ankle. Let the chest open without exaggeration. Soften the abdomen just enough for diaphragmatic movement, and keep the chin level rather than lifted. This alignment lengthens the breath and slows micro fidgets, which reduces the background noise your body broadcasts. Eye contact follows the same principle of steadiness over intensity. Aim for triangular gaze, eyes to mouth, in calm cycles of 2 to 3 seconds when listening and speaking, with natural breaks to avoid staring contests. The voice benefits from pacing and resonance more than volume, slightly slower tempo, full exhale to finish sentences, and articulation that lets consonants land. These cues together create a baseline presence that reads as grounded instead of rigid, engaged instead of hungry. Subtle magnetism appears as micro-feedback before it shows up as overt attention. People respond faster to your messages, not because you chase, but because your communication carries less friction. Strangers hold eye contact a fraction longer before looking away. In shared spaces, bodies orient toward you at small angles rather than closing off. Feet point in your direction during group conversations even when you are not speaking. Smiles arrive sooner after your neutral greeting, and service interactions feel smoother with fewer repeated instructions. You may notice curiosity expressed as quick second glances, head tilts, or brief pauses that invite you to speak first. None of this is theatrical. It is the environment sampling your steadier signal and adjusting to it. The key is to avoid narrating these moments as conquest. Treat them as data confirming that regulation is visible. You wake up tired, scroll to numb the static, spend the day leaking focus in 1,000 small ways, and fall asleep with the same emptiness that keeps your jaw clenched and your chest hollow. Anxiety, apathy, compulsive release, the quiet erosion of your direction. Modern life trains you to confuse stimulation with power, while your masculine core thins out. If this sounds like you, it's not because you're weak. It's because you've been conditioned to waste what you were meant to wield. The antidote isn't another dopamine hit. It's initiation. The Gods of Semen Patreon is a sealed gate, part monastery, part war room, where retention becomes a daily discipline, your aura thickens, and you rebuild a life that attracts instead of chases. Inside, you get daily motivational posts that cut through noise and call you to action, videos too raw for YouTube, ritual PDFs to anchor your nights and mornings, complete series on semen retention, spiritual warfare, and philosophical readings that sharpen speech and decisions. Early access to drops and projects so you move first, not last. Entry is limited. There's a promotion open only to the first 10 men who enter through the pinned comment. This is not for everyone. It's for men brave enough to guard, transmute, and rise. On one side stand the slaves of their vices, scrolling and spilling until they forget their own names. On the other, the guardians of themselves, still, directed, and dangerous in the best way. Choose your side. Click the pinned comment and grab the promo now. For the brotherhood who wants the manual, meet Stored Sex, the code of raw masculine energy. Wander 70+ pages across 8 modules, forged to turn retention into presence, focus, and mission. Inside, you'll find activation phrases that reframe urges on command, spiritual practices that lower the noise and raise your signal, and concrete retention rituals that build a body and mind other men feel when you walk in. This is not theory, but a rite of passage in book form designed to carry you from day 10's turbulence today, 45's rhythm today, 100's quiet authority. If you're ready to stop leaking power and start embodying it, follow the link in the description or the pinned comment. There's an exclusive promotion for the first 10 buyers. A simple field test helps separate perception from projection. Use the silent route in a neutral territory like a cafe or gym. Choose a consistent window of time across 3 non-consecutive days to control for crowd patterns. Enter with the same minimal uniform, plain top, clean shoes, no loud branding, and adopt the baseline presence cues, stacked posture, unhurried gait, calm scanning without phone in hand. In the cafe, order briefly, choose a seat with moderate traffic, and read or journal without theatrics for 20 minutes. In the gym, complete a short compound-focused circuit without headphones for 15 to 20 minutes, resting in open posture between sets. You are not performing. You are emitting a stable signal and observing how the room organizes around it. Capture the results in a signal journal immediately after each session to avoid memory edits. Log objective counts and short descriptors under 4 headings: glances, proximity, openings, and follow-through. Glances records the number of double looks or holds beyond 1 second. Proximity tracks unsolicited close range within 1 arm's length when other options exist. Openings notes moments that invite interaction. Staff initiating extra service, someone asking a non-essential question, a neighbor commenting on your book or exercise. Follow through records any interaction you chose to continue, along with latency to reply if exchanges move to messages. Keep each entry to a few lines with numbers first, then one sentence of context. To avoid confirmation bias, score each category on a 0 to 2 scale, rather than writing long interpretations. 0 means baseline or below, 1 means mild uptick, 2 means clear uptick. After 3 sessions, look for a consistent pattern rather than a single spike. If 2 of the 4 categories show 1-point improvements on at least 2 days, it suggests your presence is crossing the threshold from internal to externally legible. If the numbers are flat, do not force signals. Adjust inputs you control. Refine posture by checking shoulder tension during rests. Slow your exhale at sentence ends, or reduce self-touching habits like face scratching or hair adjustments that leak nervous energy. Repeat the same route the following week and compare scores. Sustaining this chapter's gains relies on keeping the signal clean. That means minimizing competing broadcasts, such as loud accessories, agitated gestures, or a phone acting as a social shield. It also means letting silence do part of the work. Comfortable pauses signal that you are not rushing to earn space. They invite others to fill the gap if interested. When interaction occurs, keep your frame intact by matching energy rather than mirroring anxiety. Short answers with clear edges, a stable gaze, and a relaxed half-smile communicate availability without need. Over days, the journal becomes a quiet proof that early aura effects are not fantasy. They are the social echo of nervous system adjustments you have already begun to make. Around day 45, the system begins to hold itself. What felt like constant negotiation drops to background noise, and the body starts delivering a steadier signal even on ordinary days. Sleep consolidates, appetite stops swinging between extremes, and attention tolerates longer stretches without novelty. This is the threshold where repetition has carved grooves deep enough for behavior to glide. You notice it in small ways. The phone stays face down without effort. Training sessions begin on time because the bag was packed the night before. Meals are simpler because decisions were front-loaded on the weekend. The nervous system still tests you, but the tests are shorter and less convincing. This is not the finish line. It is the moment when discipline converts from a feeling to a structure. Use that structure to shift from avoidance to construction. Establish an anchor routine that compresses 3 reliable wins into the first 90 minutes of the day: light, water, and 1 cognitively demanding block. Step into sunlight or bright light within 30 minutes of waking, hydrate before coffee, and sit for a focused work interval that is hard enough to stretch you but short enough to complete without drama. The goal is cadence, not heroics. Once the morning locks, the rest of the day follows a predictable arc: a work block that matters, a movement block that stabilizes mood, and an evening routine that lands you. Consistency here is less about motivation and more about removing decisions. Prepare environments the night before, set default start times, and treat these appointments as non-transferable. When the anchors repeat, your baseline presence thickens, and urges have fewer doors to enter. Swaps at this stage transform scattered effort into compounding outcomes. Replace fragmented workouts with a simple compound first template that progresses weekly. Prioritize movements that ask the whole system to coordinate: squat or split squat, hinge or deadlift variation, push, pull, carry. Aim for 3 sessions across the week with 1 day reserved for a longer zone 2 effort to clean the mind and the bloodstream at once. Progress by adding a small amount of load, a clean rep, or 1 more set for a single movement rather than chasing new exercises. Finish sessions with breath work or a 5-minute walk to cue recovery before life resumes, so training energy does not spill into agitation. Upgrade consumption by adding density rather than volume. Choose 1 demanding book or paper within your core interests and commit to 20 to 30 minutes of active reading on most days. Mark questions in the margin. Capture 1 useful excerpt and close with a 2-sentence application note that ties the idea to your current project. This loop, question, evidence, application, turns reading from passive intake into material that sharpens speech and decision-making. Over a month, the notes become a private library you can cite in conversations and plans, which quietly raises perceived authority without any performance. Alchemy of the Gods is a ritual in book form, a living grimoire that takes the serpentine fire of Kundalini from myth to method, guides the crystalline oil, the sacred anointing that clarifies the mind, through your inner temple, and opens the gate to spiritual liberation with steps you can practice today. Each chapter is a key, and each practice a seal, uniting symbolic language with strategic application so you don't just read transformation, you enact it. Whether you prefer the weight of paper on the desk, the precision of digital on your device, or the voice of initiation in your ears, Alchemy of the Gods is available in print, ebook, and audiobook. Enter not as a spectator but as an initiate. This is a portal of activation designed to convert scattered impulse into directed presence and dormant potential into disciplined power. To begin the rite, follow the link in the description or the pinned comment. Semen Retention Success Path is a 2-hour, 6-part audiobook forged as a master key for focus, strength, and spiritual unlocking. It systematizes retention into a progression you can live, calibrating urges, consolidating rhythm, weaponizing attention, and channeling energy toward mission. Listen with a notebook open and your schedule in view. This is training, not entertainment. As a ceremonial bonus, the first listeners who enter through the pinned comment unlock 30% off the companion ebook, The Art of Semen Retention for Men, a practical manual with 20+ pages of exercises, prompts, and protocols you can deploy the same day. If this work is feeding your edge, step closer to the fire and become a channel member. Members receive early access to releases, priority responses when you need clarity, and a direct line of support to the mission that is shaping this community. Direct the new stability into a medium-range project that takes 4 to 8 weeks and has a visible output. It can be a physique block with measurable targets, a product draft with a publishing date, a skill sprint with a demo, or a spiritual commitment with defined practices and a brief reflection to share. Choose one, write the criteria for done, and divide into weekly milestones. Keep a single page that shows the next 3 actions at all times, so that progress never depends on inspiration. The day 45 energy sticks best when it is poured into a container with edges. Social shielding now becomes the difference between maintaining rhythm and bleeding it. Boundaries are most effective when they are pre-written and impersonal, not improvised under pressure. Create no-entry agreements for your device and your door. After a set time, the phone lives outside the bedroom, and unplanned visits or calls are answered the next morning unless truly urgent. Replace vague openness with default decline and specific yes. Decline broad invitations that blur bedtime or training time. Say yes to a narrow window that you can honor without debt. Write 2 or 3 sentences you will reuse for common requests so you can respond without drama, and keep your tone warm but firm. Cut triggers at the root instead of pruning leaves. Unfollow accounts that serve the old circuitry. Unsubscribe from feeds that spike late-night curiosity, and replace them with a small roster of high-signal sources that align with your project. Reduce ambient noise by closing loops aggressively. If a message requires less than 2 minutes, reply or archive. If it requires more, schedule it. Keep your environment boring in the ways that matter and interesting where it pays. A sparse bedroom that seduces you to sleep, a tidy desk that invites deep work, a gym bag that is always ready. Curate circles that reinforce the new cadence. Seek 3 roles rather than a crowd. A training partner or coach who normalizes progression, an accountability counterpart who trades weekly check-ins on the medium-range project, and a mentor at distance whose work you study and emulate without demanding access. Meet on predictable cadence with clear agendas, 15 minutes for goals, obstacles, and next actions, so that the relationship sharpens behavior rather than dissolves into chatter. If certain connections consistently pull you back into late nights, gossip, or nostalgic loops, reduce exposure without hostility. The boundary is not a moral judgment, it is an energy budget. As this rhythm settles, you will notice conversational shifts. People bring you questions that assume you can decide. Meetings shorten because you cut to what matters. Invitations become more selective because your availability has edges. The room feels less like a drain and more like a field you can shape, not through volume but through clarity. Protect this phase from complacency by tracking a handful of leading indicators each week. Training sessions completed, deep work hours, bedtime consistency, project milestone status, and the number of unplanned late-night device unlocks. When these numbers hold steady, presence compounds. When one slides, correct early. Day 45 is the handover from willpower to systems. Treat it like a relay and keep the baton moving. By day 45, an invisible boundary begins to broadcast before you speak. The body's calmer baseline sets distance, tempo, and tone in a way others register as automatic respect. People interrupt less because your cadence no longer invites overlap. Testing behaviors decline because reactivity has dropped out of your signal. Provocations do not find purchase and quickly extinguish themselves. Proxemics shift subtly. Most interactions stop a step earlier than before. Angles open rather than crowd, and your personal space is negotiated rather than taken. The boundary is maintained by 3 anchors that operate together: a tall, stacked posture that never locks, a paced voice that ends sentences on a full exhale, and a consistent willingness to let a request sit in silence for a beat before answering. That small delay communicates that decisions are chosen, not yanked from you. When the boundary is challenged, you keep form and adjust environment instead of raising volume. Change distance, change seat, change topic with a clear pivot. Consistency is the teacher. After a few repetitions, the room learns your edges and respects them without ceremony. Conversations rise in level because your frame now filters for objectives, not entertainment. The first effect is compression. Fewer side quests, clearer premises, faster arrival at what matters. You guide exchanges through a simple internal rail: context, outcome, next step. So talk becomes a working tool rather than a pressure release. The voice is steady and specific, which invites directness in return. You ask for facts before opinions, time frames before promises, responsibilities before enthusiasm. Curiosity remains, but it is channeled. You probe constraints and success criteria instead of gossip. When emotion enters, you acknowledge without absorbing, then route it toward action. This does not make you cold, it makes you useful. The longer you hold this cadence, the more people will bring you questions aligned with your strengths, and the less you will be pulled into loops that dilute attention. Strategic talk also means knowing when not to talk. Comfortable pauses are a competence. 3 to 5 seconds of quiet after a key point gives others room to reveal priorities and saves you from overselling. On day 10, a man chooses to resist. On day 45, he learns to direct. On day 100, he becomes the one who decides. The threshold is here. Remain where your energy leaks in quiet loops, or cross into the discipline that makes your presence undeniable. Seal this lesson with a like, accept the journey by subscribing and activating the bell, and step to the next right by watching the recommended video. The path advances for those who move.